Singing Symphony. Honestly, so that's like 3 weeks. I'm like,
Okay. Alright, welcome to the Q&A!
We're planning from the board. If you're on the board, can you raise your hand?
You're like once and all the penny.
Board.
So basically, what we're gonna do is it's just a Q&A. We have these little question sheets at the front. So at the back half of the Q&A, we're going to invite everyone to ask some questions. So you don't have to ask the questions on the list, and it's going to be more conversation focused. But if you see anything on here that you would like to ask, you're welcome to. But you're also very welcome to ask your own questions. So if anybody, but there's like 25 of these, so if anyone would like to kind of more than 25 people.
I'm gonna keep it real, so feel free to ask those questions, okay?
Yeah, of course.
I lose my voice.
Yeah. So just if you would like to maybe have one to share between 2 or 3 people, or if you'd like to just ask your own questions, that's fine. But
We'll have him pass, Avery.
Yeah.
And just to give some background, I think we spoke for a minute, but the group got together a little over a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and did a lot of research on you. Started digging around, social media hunting, looked on your webpage, Google, and
I'm sorry.
No. I mean, they were really pumped and learned a lot more about you, and it kind of led through a whole lot of organic questions, which I'm sure is going to happen today naturally. Okay, one question's going to start it off, and then it's just going to kind of turn into what it is, which is awesome. But these guys typed up all of those notes from the day, and so this can serve just maybe you can start getting some things percolating in your minds about what to ask our guest. Okay. The other thing that we wanted to start off with today is that 2 of our students have been working on Will Know and wanted to perform to start off the session. So Catherine and Abby, you
I'll make sure to share it. Could pass this one down too.
Overhead, paid down.
New Day begun? All right. So, first of all, you should know that the title comes from a lyric of the song, "Lift Every Voice and Sing," which is the Black National Anthem. Okay. Right at the climax of the piece, facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Those are the lyrics at the climax, and then at the end it repeats till victory is won. So I was contacted by Dr. Gary Shallard, who is the director of bands at Western Kentucky University, back in the fall of 2015. He was like, listen, our band was just chosen to play at CBDNA Regional, and that year was in Charleston, South Carolina, and the shooting at the church had just happened 3 months before. And he was like, the performance is going to be at the Gilead Center. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Charleston, South Carolina, but the Gilead Center is basically across the street from Mother Emanuel Church. And he was like, I don't think we can do a performance here without honoring those 9 people who were killed. And so he was like, I got your name from your friend, like one of my best friends is John Mackey, right? And so this is really interesting. He was like, I contacted John first, but John was like, I definitely am not the person to write that piece. And it was John's spouse, Abby, who was like, you know, who should write that piece? I think Omar should write that piece. And so he passed my name along. And so Dr. Shallard is telling me all this stuff. And he's like, I want something that's going to be really special, and I'm going to invite members of the church to the premiere, and it's going to be really powerful. And at that time, I'd not really written a big wind ensemble piece, so I'm listening with the phone kind of like this, because I'm just really freaked out. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll think about it and get back to you. And I had no intention of saying yes to writing that piece, because that was just way too much pressure. And I called my dad, and long story short, my dad was like, you better call him back and say yes. So I called back and I said yes. And honestly, saying yes to writing that piece was the hardest part about writing. And knowing that members of Mother Emanuel Church were going to be in attendance at the premiere, that told me everything that the piece needed to sound like. I knew that I wanted to use the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, as the main melody. I knew that it was going to have gospel. I knew that it was going to have the blues. I knew that there would be stomping and clapping. I knew there would be singing. I knew there would be tambourine, because the last thing I would want to do is to write some esoteric piece of music and say, I promise this is about you, I swear. I wanted them to hear themselves and their experiences in every note of the piece. So I went straight to the tradition of the African Methodist Episcopalian Church, and I pulled all of those sounds out and put it into that piece. So that's kind of how that came about. It didn't take that long to write. It seems like a piece that should have been really hard, but again, knowing that we're going to be there, I was like, I know exactly what I need to do. That section in 66, though, that was where I allowed myself to just kind of have a moment of rage, right? Because this piece is not about me at all. So I had to ask myself a lot of questions when sitting down to write this. How much of myself am I going to put into this piece? What do I want people to feel like by the end of this piece? What will be the journey? How does a piece like this end? It can't end with a 1 chord, you know? Like, it can't end with like a 1 chord with a fermata. That doesn't make any sense. The only way to end a piece like this is one resilient, resounding, unified note that grows and grows over the sound of marching, which has been quintessential to the movement of African American liberation in this country, is marching. So that's why the piece ends the way it does, with one note ringing till an almost unbearable volume. So that, I mean, there's a reason for everything that's in that piece. Every note is well thought out, right? The middle section of that piece where you guys are singing. So Dr. Shallard brought me down for the world premiere, and I went on a little bit of a tour with Western Kentucky University Wind Ensemble. And the night before the concert, we had a rehearsal at Goose Creek High School. Goose Creek High School is where Sharonda Singleton taught track, and she was one of the 9 people who were killed that day. And so the then band director, Jenny Collins, opened the band room up for us, and we got in there, and a lot of her students came, and they just told us stories about Sharonda and tried to give us a sense of the scope of what it is that we were doing and who we were honoring and playing this piece. And she told us that there's a relatively new span bridge that was built to connect Charleston to like mainland. It's a little bit of, it's across the water. And she said after this had happened, the whole town had marched across this bridge, and they'd held hands and they sang songs, and Lift Every Voice and Sing was one of the songs that they sang. So that's why there are a lot of words in the music at that point, because I'm like, well, what does that singing sound like? You know, it's not hopeful, it's not joyous. What is it? It's defiant. It's like singing past your pain, you know? And then the optimism at the end. I don't know how many of you remember this court case. I was following it pretty closely, and it just shook me and shook a lot of people in this country to the core. And during the court case, the shooter was not in the courtroom, obviously. He was somewhere far away, and they had a camera on him. So they were addressing him through closed-circuit television. And all of the families of the 9 people who were killed were in attendance. And one by one, they spoke to him via closed-circuit television, and they one by one forgave him. And I was like, okay, I have to find a way to honor that level of strength and courage and hope and in the music. And so that's why there's so much brightness towards the end of the piece. Okay. After the big maestoso, when it gets slow and very chorale-like, that was me trying to imagine the first Sunday service after the shooting happened, when they had started the road to healing. What must that have been like? So I see a lot of stained glass in that moment, and I just see a light coming through. And that's the story. And then through that, I just wanted to capture this feeling that I had of here we are in 2015 still dealing with things that we dealt with in 1950 and in 1850 and in 1750, right? So I tried to take us on that journey throughout the piece, which is why there's that section of 1950s R&B. There's that section of 9/8 where I kept telling you to put accents on 3. To me, that is supposed to evoke the rocking of a slave ship. Okay, like I tried to get it all in there to just capture all of the pain. The silence, I wanted to convey the sense of loss and the weight of everything, and I just wanted people to be uncomfortable. Those chords are not comfortable, and they're not comfortably scored. I realized that I could have given those chords to the trombones, and it probably would have made more sense, but I didn't want it to make sense. I wanted to give it to an instrument where in that range, they would strain a little bit, because I needed to capture that sound, right? During 66, the melody is played in a really uncomfortable register. There are trumpets who play it with mutes in, there's like high bassoons, like there's a lot of, you know, and it's getting choked off, and that's supposed to be a I can't breathe moment, Eric Garner, right? And that whole situation. So I wanted the melody to slowly get choked off by all of the chaos of that moment. So all of my choices in that piece are very deliberate. And that whole opening section, I was just trying to be Terrence Blanchard. If you guys don't know who Terrence Blanchard is, he is a brilliant trumpet player and composer, jazz and classical. And if you've ever seen a Spike Lee movie in your life, he did the score to it, right? He actually just won a Grammy for a track off of Black Klansman because he did that movie as well. And so Terrence Blanchard is originally from New Orleans. And he has a Grammy Award-winning album called When the Levees Broke. Oh, no, that's not the name of the album. It's called A Tale of God's Will, A Requiem for Katrina. And it's the soundtrack to a Spike Lee documentary called When the Levees Broke about Hurricane Katrina and the government's non-action towards the citizens of New Orleans, right? And calling them refugees when it's like, no, they're American citizens who are wading in water, literally wading in water up to here and over their heads for a week because the government just left an entire city of people to basically drown, right? And so he did the soundtrack for that. And the emotions that he was able to capture in that soundtrack is exactly what I was trying to do in that opening 12/8. It's just happy. It's all rooted in something. Every choice I make is deliberate. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No.
So you were kind of talking about a lot of themes of kind of discomfort and showing this kind of like pain
Yeah.
in music. Would you say like, how would you say like those themes kind of translate into Mother of Revolution or like?
Mother of a
were there
Revolution
any
is
similarities?
not,
Or,
no.
well, like, or kind of, like, how were there any similar themes or?
I think, no, I took a very different approach to that. Because a Mother of a Revolution, I cannot say the name of that piece, and I named it. A Mother of a Revolution, to me, that's just supposed to be a larger than life, over the top type of piece, right? By the way, hey, we're in Chicago. I don't know if this is still true or not, but the Art Institute of Chicago had, when I was here in December for Midwest, they had an Andy Warhol exhibit, and he has this incredible painting of Marsha Johnson, who is who that piece is about. So, like, I don't know if the exhibit is still there, but you should definitely go to that and check that out, right? But that piece was just about being larger than life and like Wonder Woman, but Wonder Woman from the 70s, like the campier one, right, where she like spun in a circle. I know if you've seen it, it's not because it was on TV recently, right? This was the 70s. But if you like Google the Wonder Woman theme, like all these superhero themes from the 70s were rooted in the music of the time. The music of the time was funk and disco. So like the old Hulk with Lou Ferrigno, like painted green, right? All of that stuff, that's the kind of thing I was trying to capture. And I chose disco because I wanted to honor the dance club as being a haven for the queer community, right? Like that's where planning happened, and that's where safety happened, and that's where liberation happened, and that's where defiance happened. And so that's why the whole second half of that piece goes into disco, because I wanted to honor that space, right? And I was just thinking to myself, I tell you what, here's a story about that piece, is that when I was asked to commission it, I was originally asked to write something for Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk's great, he's really important, but Harvey Milk has books, Harvey Milk has movies, Harvey Milk has documentaries. I'm like, Harvey Milk was not the one player in this story, right? There was a black trans woman who set it off, and I want to write a piece about her. So if you're cool with me writing a piece about her, I will do this, right? And so I was just thinking about the bravery that it takes to be yourself, even if your very existence is so much of a threat to somebody who doesn't know you, they will try to end your life at any given moment. At any given moment. You might go to the grocery store and not come back because somebody saw you and was just so threatened by your existence that they decided to end your life. And to live out loud in bravery and defiance of that, I was like, I can think of no braver thing, therefore they deserve a superhero theme. And so that's why that piece is a superhero theme, steeped in disco. I was very deliberate about my choice in doing that. That's what that piece is about. Whole different thing, but I feel ways about things. So I had to put that into music. Hey y'all.
Yeah. So we were kind of talking about in your big meeting. Do you have any specific instances of like assimilation you've had to experience, like working in kind of a concert band industry or like composition?
That is a good question. The answer is no. And if I did, it's because I felt like that's what I had to do to write a band piece. I don't write band music, by the way. I don't know how to write wind ensemble music. I literally don't know how to do that. I write my music for wind ensemble. There's a difference. Does that make sense to you? I've tried to write wind ensemble pieces and they're entirely forgettable because I was trying to be what this medium is. Wind ensemble as an ensemble and wind ensemble as a genre do not have to be the same thing. Right? Orchestral music as a genre and orchestral music as an ensemble do not have to be the same thing. Right? If you give a trumpet to Wynton Marsalis and you give a trumpet to Chris Martin, you guys know Chris Martin?
Yes.
Principal trumpet of the New York Phil. They should sound different because they're two different people from different backgrounds. So like ensembles should sound different depending on who's writing for them. Does that make sense? So like I guess if I did try to assimilate, it's because I thought that that's what I had to do, but I didn't find my success in this field until I started being myself. And then everything took off. And now I do what I want.
I know a lot of people enjoy marching band. What was your experience as a drum major?
Ooh, yeah, so I was drum major of my high school marching band in Newark, Delaware. Not to be confused with Newark, New Jersey. Two different places. And then I was drum major of the James Madison University Marching World Youths for 2 years. That was fun. I got a cape, right? It went off to one side. It was purple on the inside. All white. I was clean. And the JMU now has become a little bit of a powerhouse in its football division. But my first year as drum major, or was it my second year as drum major, was the first time that we won a national championship football game. So I feel honored to have been a part of that history and to be in that moment and to be leading the marching band during that game, which was like the craziest experience of my life because everybody's energy was on 11 for that entire 3-hour football game. Meanwhile, the drum majors are freaking out because the referees are like, if the band's playing 1 second into the ball being in motion, your team's be penalized. And we were like, we can't be the reason we lose this game. So like the drum majors are shaking and everybody else is just screaming and having a good time. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I also, here's a little known fact about me, is that back in '99, I was a lead baritone for Crossman. I was 13 years old, going on 14. Entirely too young. The thing is that Crossman, before they were in San Antonio, Texas, they used to be based out of the East Coast, and they literally rehearsed at my high school. So I was like, oh, what's this flyer for the Crossman? Is it Crossman here? And then my friend James, who was in the percussion, he marched CrossFit in '98. He's like, yeah, you should do it. 13-year-old me. I was like, yeah, sure, it'll be fun. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. I was too young. And I feel ways about things with regards to the way some drum corps are run. I think there are two ways to achieve a goal. There is eustress and there's distress, right? Eustress is positive stress. Distress is negative stress. And I think that there are maybe one too many drum corps that are abusive towards their members, and then their members get what's called Stockholm syndrome, where they're like, oh, you're mean because that's just what we have to do to be good, so it's fine. And then like there's not actually any education going on at all. You're just like beating people down in the sun for 8 hours a day for 3 months. And then they go on to become educators and they pass on that same trauma. So that's one thing to deal with. It's another thing to deal with when you're 14 years old and everybody else is 19. So I didn't make it very long. Also, my grandmother passed away early on tour, and so I left. By the way, Rule 1 of drum corps, you don't leave drum corps. I didn't know that. I was 14 years old, and I got outcasted so hard by not just the members, but also the staff. The staff was awful to me. These are full-grown adults, 30 and 40 years old. I was 14 years old, just lost my grandmother. They were just like, you don't leave, right? And there was one person in staff who was kind to me. And 2 years ago, I got to see her again for the first time 20 years later and give her a hug and to thank her for that, because that meant so much to me. So that's my drum corps experience. Sorry. I'm sure they're not all like that, but that was my experience.
Do you think, like, generally, like, as a young musician, you experience more, like, of the eustress or distress, or just kind of, like...
That's so triggering, right? Because I'm like, I gotta wake up.
That's fact stuff.
Me in general?
You be hearing that.
Just general, is it more like a mix, or just kind of...
No, in general, I had a very eustress environment. I had great directors. I mean, my band was one of those. You guys are so awesome. My band wouldn't shut up. They would not shut. They would not stop talking. I'll never forget one time when our band director opened up his water bottle and threw it in the band. I couldn't even be mad at him. Nobody would stop talking. It was awful. And now that I'm an educator, I'm just like, we work too hard and we care too much to show up and have everybody disregard us. That is not cool. Right? That's what I said.
I know Mr. Booper says that.
Gosh, it's one thing if we show up and we don't care and we're just collecting a check, but like if we are away from our families and we are planning and all this stuff and we show up in front of you and we're trying to love on y'all and to, you know, give you all the goodness and y'all are not paying attention, I freak out about that stuff. But other than that moment, it's all been eustress. I've had wonderful educators, which is why I do what I do. I am 100% a product of public school music education, all the way through, all the way through. Bands, you know, public school bands, choirs, orchestras, marching band. I just couldn't get enough of that. I ate all of that up, and it's worked out for me, I will say. So, yeah. So let me give a shout out to your directors for what you guys did. You guys are the reason that I went, and my first degree is actually in music education. So that's why. So I thank you guys. Yeah.
Would you say, because obviously you're a composer and a musician, do you think it's more like, I don't know how to phrase this, but like, do you think it's more viable to be a composer or a musician, like in terms of like getting a job?
You mean like a player, someone who plays?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you just got to do what you're called to do, right? And if you walk your path, things will open up. Right? They will not open up as long as you try to resist what it is that you're called to do. As a matter of fact, if you resist what you're called to do, you end up just feeling gross and getting depressed. It's because your soul is wilting, because you're not doing the things that you're supposed to do. Right? So like, listen to what you're supposed to do and make it, and it will work for you. Right? That's what you gotta do. Yeah.
Sorry, what brought you to music? Like, was there something like in your childhood or?
I showed up one day in 4th grade and they were like, "Want to join the band?" I was like, "Okay." And that's literally how it started. And then once I got in there, I could not get enough. Well, that's not true. Here's what had happened. So I was a trombone player, right? And I had the trombone. I just wasn't practicing very much. I wasn't showing up to rehearsals. And the band director called my mom. He was just like, "I don't think he should be in a band because he doesn't seem to want to." My mom was like, "No, I'm good for this. He's gonna do it." And And then from that moment on, I couldn't get enough. So I had a little bit of a moment in the beginning where I don't know what was wrong with me. I was very absent-minded, actually. I didn't know how to read the way the schedules were done. That's the truth, right? The schedules were done on this card, and it was a calendar, and I didn't know what I was looking at. So most of the time, I didn't even know when our rehearsals were. And so I didn't go, and it wasn't because I didn't care. I just was like, wait, what do you mean we have rehearsal right now? It was really confusing to me. I figured it out. Yeah.
So, like, what was the rest of your educational journey like after high school?
Sure, sure. So the reason that I went to JMU is because of the Marching World Dukes. I will put that out there, okay? The Marching World Dukes is like a 500-person marching band. It is incredible. Back in the day, it was like 400, right? And I feel like now the trend is that all band directors, or most band directors, kind of have their shows privately arranged for marching band. But back in the day, it was all catalogs. It was like Hal Leonard catalog, it was a Rangers Publishing Company, it was Warner Brothers, right? And they would send you CDs with bands playing this music. My freshman year of high school, our show was Star Wars because that's when the reissue of Star Wars was released, right? I'm saying right like you were there. Y'all weren't there. But let me tell you, that's when it was re-released. And so Larry Clark had arranged this marching band show of Star Wars music. And when you hit play on Warner Brothers, the first thing you heard was the Marching World Dukes playing the 20th Century Fox fanfare. And at 13 years old, I heard that and was like, well, this is when I'm going to college. I didn't apply anywhere else. I was just like, going to JMU, and I went to JMU. I got a degree in music education because I wanted to be just like my band directors, and I got a minor in jazz studies. Now, I didn't end up teaching public school, right? Because I student taught, and I was like, whew. You saw me dying up there on the podium after 20 minutes? Imagining my life like that for 20 years, I was like, oh no, we can't do this. Right? So again, hats off to you guys, and I don't know how you do it. It's so hard. And so when I was a junior, well, let me back up. As a freshman in college, I was fortunate enough to be one of 2 freshmen who made the top jazz ensemble in my first semester. And the music that we played, my director was also a composer. It changed my life. It blew my mind. I was like, I didn't even know that this was a thing. And so that really shaped my life. And you know, I used to write for fun. I started writing like 8th grade for fun, right? And I gotten pretty good at it by the time I got to college. And my director knew that, and he kept on me. He was like, when are you gonna write something for jazz ensemble? I was like, no way. You hear the amazing music and programming, I do not want to have my music programmed against that. Then I sucked it up. My junior year, I wrote something for big band. And long story short, I know you guys know that I have a couple albums out. That piece is track 3 on my first album, right? And then I wrote another piece that was track 2 on my first album. So that was a junior and a senior in college respectively. I was like 19 and 20 when I wrote those. And so I was like, maybe I'm good at this. Let me go to school for writing. So I applied to graduate schools for writing. I got into the schools that I got into, which was all of them. And I went to New England. I applied to 3 schools and I got in, okay? 2 in Florida, 1 in Boston. I decided to go where it's cold because it's like, it's cold and I'll stay inside and work. And so I went to Boston, New England Conservatory, you know, I got a master's degree in jazz composition. That band that I put together a band for my graduate recital. It was amazing. And I was like, man, it would suck if this is over. Let's not be over. And that's how my big band started. And then while I was finishing my master's, I got hired to faculty at Berkeley. That's a whole different story. It's kind of fascinating, but I don't want to like, if you want to hear it, I can tell you, but it's kind of weird. So May of 2008, I graduated from NEC. In August 2008, I was sitting in new faculty orientation next to one of my professors who was also going to Berkeley. So he went from being my professor to like being a colleague. We were sitting next to each other in faculty orientation. I was like, this is weird. Right? So I just turned 24 at that point, and then I started teaching at Berkeley part-time. And part-time teaching is hard. Adjunct teaching is hard in college. And, you know, I had this awkward moment where I was like, I need to hang on to this restaurant job. And then I was waiting on a table, and it ended up being like some of the higher-ups at the college. And they were like, aren't you a professor at our school? I was like, yeah, here's your fish. And then, like, you know, I got the opportunity to be a teaching fellow for the Jazz Harmony course at Harvard. So I did that for 4 years while I was at Berkeley. Then eventually I became full-time and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm at Peabody Conservatory. That's the abridged version for time's sake. Yeah.
So how did you meet John Mackey and all those other composers? Man, that's just through
John and I used to live very close to each other when he moved to Boston. And I was like, he made a post years ago about the fact that he was moving to Boston or to Cambridge, and I slid in his DMs. I was like, let's be friends, as one does. And then we like hung out, and then we became like super close friends. And so he's been to my concerts, my big band concerts. He was like, you got to meet my friend Mike Martin. He's amazing, right? And so love that guy. So me and John and Mike are on a perpetual three-way text thread, and we text each other all the time and stupid stuff. And then as my music started to get more recognition, I would show up. I had this amazing moment, I think during the first Midwest, when Frank Kelly came up to me, and he was like, are you Omar Thomas? I've been dying to meet you. And I was like, hi Frank, I've been dying to meet you, because I've been playing your music since I was in high school. So he became, he's such a nurturing, loving person. If you ever get to meet Frank Kelly, he's just the sweetest guy. And so like that's how it started. And we all, composer circles. In this generation, composers are super supportive of each other, which is amazing, right? So like we all look out for each other, we stay in touch with each other, and it's like fun when we're programmed together. We like take pictures of the program and send it to each other, like we're on the program together, that's great. So yeah, it's a good vibe now. I feel like it wasn't always a good vibe. But like I feel like they're a lot younger. Composers are younger now, it feels like, than they were back in the day. Maybe I'm making that up or I just got older, I don't know. But like I feel like there's with the internet being the way that it is, musicians can get their music out a lot easier. So maybe that has something to do with the fact that like being a composer is like the age is backing down off of that, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
What's the story behind We Will Know?
Oh, that's a big one. Let me see. So that was originally written as a high school commission for Rio Americano High School in Sacramento, which has one of the strongest jazz programs in the country. And it started off as a two-movement thing called Prelude and Meditation. That part that you guys performed so beautifully didn't even exist at that moment. It was just second movement, third movement, and I knew there had to be some lyrics. And so you heard the lyrics. They're completely innocuous. They're not suggestive in any way. And so the band director was like, just to be safe, you have to like tell the students that they're singing this, they gotta take it to their parents, and everybody's parents were cool except for two parents who were like, this is about LGBT rights, I'd rather you not sing. So then at the performance, they couldn't sing the words, they had to hum them, right? Which you can't hear that when a big band is playing. But I remember the moment, that's the one and only time in my life that I've written lyrics. And I remember being so depressed. It was Tuesday. It was cloudy outside. I was sitting in that jazz harmony course, and the professor was teaching it, and it just hit me that it had to have words, and I got super bummed because I was like, I suck at lyrics. This is gonna be awful. And I lived a 15-minute walk from Harvard, so I was walking home, just being like, ugh. And I got home, and I sat down, and I opened my laptop, and in 7 minutes, I had those 4 stanzas. And I was like, okay, cool. Close my laptop. Guess that happened, right? And so then I added that first movement, and originally, if you've seen the album, it's suite in 4 movements, right? So originally it was 3 movements, but that third movement is so heavy. By the time it ends, it's very Mingus. I was trying to be Charles Mingus with that, and a lot of his music was rooted in protest music. So I was like, this is a perfect model to do this with, right? I wanted to do something that intersected with jazz and kind of like Black church and the LGBT experience, because I felt like that was, what's the word that I'm looking for? Controversial. And I wanted to be controversial, right? I was like, there are people who exist in the intersection. They deserve to be seen, right? And so I did this. 3 movements, and then on May 9, 2012, which is the last movement of that, it's for big band, that was the day that President Obama went on TV and voiced his support for marriage equality, and that was the first time that a sitting president had ever done that in the history of this country. So I ended up making that the capstone movement, and so that's like an arrangement of that hymn that you sung, overlaid with We Shall Overcome, and then the finale is just this big reharmonization of We Shall Overcome, and so that ended up being the full suite. It won some awards. It was really cool. I got that album out pretty soon after the first one because it felt timely. And so like I rushed to get 2 big band albums out in like 2 years. I don't recommend doing that. Right? Because only now have I gotten the energy back to do another big band album. And I'm actually getting them back together in January of 2021. And we're gonna record our 3rd album finally. But it took me that long to recover from the strain of self-producing a big band album where you write all the music and you do all the emails and you do all the schedules and you pay everybody and all of that stuff.
So that can also be played as a jazz chart?
It's written for big band, actually. So the first movement is what you heard. That's the first movement of the whole suite. The second movement is just big band. It's slow. It's called In Memoriam. The third movement is like a free improvisation over a 6/4 like Afro-Cuban groove, right? And that singing comes back over that, but the whole band is singing out of time over that groove, and it's free improvisation. And then the fourth movement is that like 4.5 minute We Shall Overcome. So yeah, check out the album. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I have another question.
Yeah, sure.
So, what is it like? What does a day-to-day like work day look like for you? Like, what do you kind of do?
I'm on a plane somewhere. These days, I'm on a plane. Right, I get on the plane and I land where I land, and it depends on whatever my schedule is at any given moment. But also, this morning before this whole day, I taught 2 of my classes remotely at Peabody via Zoom. So at 8 and 9, I taught 2 classes, and then I came here and did the 3 rehearsals, and then in between I went to the coffee shop and sent some more emails and graded some things, and then I came back and did this rehearsal. Now I'm here. I'm tired. I'm tired. So that's what it is. Right now I'm not writing a lot. I put all commissions on hold until after the album is out because I kind of want to spend what little energy I have updating all of the music. Because the music has been written, some of it for 13 years, and so I just want it to be as good as it can be. So my devotion right now is to updating all of those charts. So that's what my day-to-day is like right now. That didn't look like that 6 months ago, won't look like that 6 months from now. Yeah.
How has what you teach, like currently specifically, influenced your composition?
Oh, that's a great question. It definitely has. The last piece that I did, well, 2 pieces ago, was a piece called Come Sunday, right? Which is a piece that is about the Hammond organ in Black church music, right? And so the slow movement, I had this realization. Well, I had the realization a long time ago that like this church music is basically Bach with the blues on top. That's great. That's exactly what it is. It's Bach with the blues on top. So I was teaching Theory 1, which is like 4-part, realizations in figured bass. And teaching that while I was writing that helped me orchestrate it so much. Because I was like, I'm just orchestrating Bach for wind ensemble, and I'm putting blues licks on top, right? And also, just as a composer, I'm always thinking, I'm always growing. As a teacher, I'm always thinking, I'm always growing. So I'm always paying attention to music I listen to with a pedagogical ear. Like, what can I teach using this thing, right? And I try to reveal those things to my students, right? I had this revelation when I was teaching Theory 5 at Peabody, which is late romantic music and 20th century techniques. And there is a love-love relationship between romantic and impressionist composers and jazz musicians. I'm trying to tell you, right? So much of that music sounds like jazz standards, like Chopin and Debussy and like Moonlight Sonata can totally be done in a jazz configuration as like a jazz quintet. It can totally be done, right? There's an album of Regina Carter, who was a jazz violinist, doing the Pavane for Dead Princess. It's one of the French people who wrote that piece. Oh, turn the camera off. I'm embarrassed. Ravel? Was it? No, not Ravel. Was it Ravel? Okay, thank you. One of the French guys, right? And it's amazing to hear it done as a jazz quintet because it makes so much sense. All those harmonies are the same, right? Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto is Eric Carmen's All by Myself. Like Barry Manilow, one of his tunes is a Chopin etude because like there's just so much relationship, and it's important for me as an educator to show my students both of those things so that they stop thinking that classical exists way over here and jazz exists way over here, and the music that I love in my life, I can't even bring it into this space. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? If you're going to school for music and you're taking music classes and you're trying to find your authentic voice, well, everybody in music classes is getting the same information. So what is it about you that's going to help you find your voice? It's all the music that you love that got you to this place. The music that you think shouldn't exist in a musical room That's exactly what that needs to be. So all the music that you love, you got to bring that to all of your classrooms. You got to bring that to all your lessons, because that's where you're going to find your own voice, right? So these are all the revelations that I've had as an educator, and this is this crusade that I'm on right now. Is to make space for all of who you are. You can't compartmentalize yourself to be a successful artist. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to show up 100% as who you are if you're going to make the truest art. Because if you compartmentalize yourself, you're not telling the truth in your art. Then who cares? Yeah.
What's some of your favorite music or favorite albums just
Awesome.
in general?
Ooh. Well, so I tell you, as a composer, some of my biggest influences, if you don't know who Maria Schneider is, you must know who Maria Schneider is. Okay? I don't have time to dig into that, but she's extremely important. And just the great big band writers I love. You know, I'll always love Ellington and Strayhorn. I think they're two of the most important writers ever to ever live. Bob Brookmeyer, who I went to study with at NEC. Gosh, what am I listening to right now? What was I listening to earlier? There's a hip hop artist named No Name, album called Telephone. Telephone is such a good album. Brass Tracks, for those who know. No, that's the name of the album. I'm not saying for those who know, but their album for those who know. I was just listening to that. I was revisiting Untitled Unmastered by Kendrick Lamar because it's been a long time since I listened to that. There's a group called Lake Street Dive. I don't know if you guys know Lake Street, but they're dear friends of mine because we all went to NEC together, right? And the drummer for that was the first drummer in my big band, Mike. So I love their music because it's just so honest. I'm really into like who's telling the truth right now in their music, you know? There'll always be a soft spot in my heart for Snarky Puppy, you know what I'm saying? Even though their live albums far eclipse their studio ones in my opinion. I'm really impressed with Jacob Collier, but I can't listen to him. Because I feel like his music is like if somebody gave you a 7-layer chocolate cake, but it was all frosting. It's just so rich that like I listened to 3 tracks and I'm like, I can't listen to this anymore. Also, I feel so bad for saying this. I think he is just such a once-in-a-generation musician, but I do not like to hear him sing. I don't like his voice. His voice bothers me so much. So like, I just have a hard time with his tone, his timbre. Just like, he sounds like he's sick all the time. Right? Which is so mean. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just like, I'm recognizing his musicianship, but I can't listen to the tone of his voice. I don't think it's enjoyable. No, I can't. I can't. Gosh, you know, just take a bunch of cotton balls and stuff in your head and sing. But it's singing tune. Anyway, that got dark. I think he's great. I really do. Yeah.
Okay, so the world is liberated. Like black liberation happened, queer liberation happened. What is the
Happened?
It happened. Like it happened.
It did?
Yeah.
It's over?
Yeah. Like, so, what does band look like in that world?
Wait.
Or like,
It
what
ain't
does
over.
marching band
It
look
ain't
like in
over.
that world? I'm setting up a scenario.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
see?
You're saying if theoretically it ever happens?
Yeah.
Oh, well, first of all, it won't.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
are you an Afro-pessimist?
Right. No, I'm a realist.
Uh,
I'm a realist. It won't ever happen. Right? That doesn't mean that you'll ever have to stop applying opposite force, right? But it'll never fully happen. So you always have to keep fighting that fight. But what does that look like in band? The second part of your question?
yeah.
It looks like concert programs that's not all dead white dudes. It just looks like a representation of the world, a representation of your band, the people in this group, on your programs. It looks like redefining what it means to be in band and what we use these spaces for, how we use this instrument, this gift that we have, right? And taking it out of that auditorium and out of this room, and finding different ways to go out and to heal the world with this gift that we have, right? It looks like I said, band music, differentiating between band music and music for band, right? So whatever music that you love, that you never think could coalesce with the music that happens in here, you got to find a way to make that happen, right? So like if you really love, I don't know, Balkan music, why not have Balkan music told from an authentic perspective through an ensemble. That authentic perspective is really important. Don't like try to step into somebody else's thing and then to try to like, because you could really fall into a ton of pitfalls. If you don't know any of the nuances of the music or why it exists or why people do that and you try to like recreate that for something, you could be doing something really awful, right? So I think that's what it looks like. It's about restructuring what being in band means and what band music sounds like. That's what. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Who had the special E on measure 23 of Shenandoah?
Oh!
Yeah. Who had the special E?
That's a good question.
You never actually said who had it.
Oh, that's good. I was hoping you would tell me. There's this note in Shenandoah. It's an E, and it's really important. Let me show you why it's important. 'Cause this is the I didn't have it memorized, right?
Okay.
But like somebody has that note, and that note is good. And love that note. Good question. I feel like that was an anticlimactic answer. I'm sorry.
No.
Good. We got a couple more minutes, I think. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, what's up?
Are there any particular tools you use when you're composing music that?
That's a good question. So my process, there are some composers who write straight into finale or straight into sequencer. John writes that way. I don't write that way. To me, the technology becomes a barrier between my thought, and by the time I get it out, it's just a completely different thing. So my tools are pencil and paper, right? And living life. That's when I do most of my writing, just when I'm walking around living life and letting ideas coalesce in my mind and like, letting them form. And if I can help it, I try to not write at the piano right away because I'm not that great of a piano player. And once you play something into existence, it's hard to unhear it. So I try to use a lot of like solfege and singing and even like evocative words. Like I need like a dark blue or something, right? To help me make sense of what it is that I want to happen. And then when I get as far as possible, that method, then I'll go to the piano and try to figure it out. But the trick for any creative person, no matter what discipline you're in, is to try to make the finished product as close to what's inside you as possible, right? And there's so many obstacles that get in the way of that, that you have, whatever your art is, you have to figure out how you can be as true to your original vision as possible. Also, you have to be willing to allow it to change, right? I think of being creative or creating something, the analogy that I always give is walking a really big dog, right? In that you are a living thing, the dog is a living thing, and you have it on a leash, so you're kind of in control, but you're allowing it to like roam around and everything. But if you try to muscle that dog in a direction it doesn't want to go, what's going to happen? That dog's going to sit, and it's not going to move, and neither are going to move, right? So sometimes you just have to ask the creature, where do you want to go? And let it lead you, and it might lead you to something that you didn't even see before. So you have to be willing to like be malleable and be open with your artistic vision. Yeah.
So could you maybe like do you have any like maybe one or two things you want to take away from like touring and working with all these schools, or like anything you want to like leave an impact on us?
Absolutely. I hope that in seeing me just show up as I am and do what I do, that you feel permission to make this space your own as well, right? Like I hope that in playing a disco superhero theme that I write very honestly and authentically, you're like, man, I think I have something to say for this ensemble as well that hasn't been said before. So I just want to give you permission because I was given permission. It was Maria Schneider's music that gave me permission to write big band music the way that I write it now. Because I didn't know that big band was allowed to be that before I heard her music. And I was like, who knew you were allowed to do this? So once I was given permission, I realized that it was my job to then pass on permission. So like, you have permission to show up as you are and to give of yourself as you are. And we actually need that. We need that in art so bad, right? So if anything, just like you have permission to show up authentically in this space. That's what being in band did for me. It gave me the confidence that I didn't have walking down the hallway on the other side of the building, right? And so this space gave me all this confidence to like show up authentically and to start to make art in that way. So Nothing else, you have permission. Right? You have permission. Yeah. Your hand up for a second? Yeah.
What are your tattoos mean?
I have a lot of them. You can only see a couple. I actually have 15 total. These are Wakandan. This says one tribe and this says one people, right? This is the flag of Guyana, where my family's from, South America. I'm actually a first-generation American, son of immigrants. And this is unlearned. This is pretty heavy. We're being fed a lot of disinformation right now. We have been for the last decade, and a lot of poison about each other. And the only way to possibly shake this off is to unlearn all of the poison that we have been fed, swallowed, and to have the courage to reshape our world and our beliefs when faced with the truth and when faced with facts, right? So unlearning is one of the most difficult things to do in your life because your whole persona, your whole worldview is shaped by, this world that you create based on your lived experiences. And then when you step out of that and you realize that there are people who exist who challenge that just by existing, you have to have the bravery to unlearn your worldview and to incorporate other people into it. So that's really hard for most people out there, and I think it's one of the most important things to do if we're going to progress as people. So that's what unlearn is about. All my tattoos have meaning, all 15 of them. I'm not like, I want to whatever just because. Which is fine if you want a whatever just because. I just know that I could personally never get a whatever just because. Just be there